This unholy abomination is disco, and it heralded the arrival of the original Space Pirate Captain Harlock series in America back in 1981, a few years after disco had ceased to be popular. The desk jockeys are always the last to know. This first foray into introducing the English-speaking world to the classic Space Pirate series was produced by ZIV International, a television distributor founded in 1971 by TV producer Irv Hollander, which primarily produced early dubs of Japanese cartoons such as Candy Candy and Captain Future.
Without gravium, gravity would no longer exist.
Oh boy.
ZIV would ultimately dub 2 Harlock volumes of 2 episodes each with drastically different approaches. The first volume consisted of episode 1 and episode 9. Yes, it's a little weird. One gets the impression of a promotional video showing how the series begins and then giving a peek ahead at how things develop later once the action is ramped up. Whatever ZIV's intentions may have been, the episodes were only ever seen in a direct-to-video release, and for its time, the first volume was a fair effort.
When the oceans of the earth died, people said, "The time has come for the end of mankind."
The script was a pretty straight and accurate translation of the original, and barring the disco theme song, the soundtrack by Seiji Yokoyama was preserved, with a few modifications made here and there and instances of songs with vocal parts. Harlock remained Harlock, though the rest of the cast wasn't quite so lucky. Mayu became Maya, a change which Harmony Gold would replicate with their dub a few years later. Kei, a name just as American as it is Japanese, became Carrie, and Yadaran became Youngblood. Tadashi Daiba was changed to Tommy Dexter, and the alien Mazone became Zetons, a thoroughly 1940s comic book style name. Predictably, a few of the more violent scenes were trimmed out, though some sneaked through intact. When all was said and done, the fact that the acting was a bit bland and stiff was really the worst thing that can be said about it.
Just as I had hoped.
Apparently desperate for far worse things to be said about their product, ZIV's second attempt went straight off a cliff. The second volume consisted of these second and third episodes. There was no indication that these were meant to be in the same continuity as the first volume. All of the voices were recast, and some of the names, which had already been changed again.
Rocky, please, look at this black sphere.
Yadaran was named Rocky instead of Youngblood, and Mime, who had gone unnamed in Volume 1, became Nova.
Nova comes from a planet where they live only on liquids.
Was this a conscious reference to the character of Nova in the Space Cruiser Yamato dub Star Blazers, or was the writer a fan of the 1930s teen actress Nova Pilbeam? History does not record the motives of the writer in this instance, but it was in the area of Tadashi's father that the overall intent became abundantly clear. As Tadashi had been named Tommy Dexter, one presumed that his father would have been known as Professor Dexter. But instead, we're introduced to him as
Dr. Hairball, tell me what's so urgent.
Yes, after a pretty faithful dub with their first attempt, ZIV decided the second time around that Harlock should actually be a goofy, wacky, farcical comedy, with some of the worst jokes and most nonsensical dialogue you've probably ever heard.
Harlock, how did you get here?
I jumped. When I say go, shoot! Shoot! Go!
Yes!
It's me.
Greetings, I am Fanbed 3. I am beautiful. I love you.
Illegal aliens from an underdeveloped galaxy decided to blackball us. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?
Only it wasn't a person, Dad. I think it's a woman.
And still, that wasn't enough. This time around, ZIV also tossed out Yokoyama's score and replaced it with this. Why, you might ask, would anyone replace this with this? It might have been sheer habit by then, as ZIV had used a composer named Mark Mercury to pointlessly rescore numerous prior anime imports, having apparently never realized that just because you've licensed the property doesn't mean it's a good idea to remove an accomplished, diverse symphonic score in favor of the sound of an Atari 2600 game cartridge being tortured with a branding iron.
Just because we can do a thing, it does not necessarily follow that we must do that thing.
Fortunately, ZIV's go at Harlock went no further. The 4 episodes that dubbed were distributed on home video by Family Home Entertainment and never led to a full production of the series.
And there was much rejoicing.
A few years later, Harmony Gold would take a crack at it, though their version, while it did make it to television, wouldn't be a true representation of the series either. But 10 years after the ZIV version, a ray of hope seemed to appear in the back pages of an American Harlock comic that was being produced at the time by Eternity Comics, written by Robert Gibson and illustrated by Ben Dunn and subsequently Tim Eldred. The ad proclaimed that the original Harlock series would soon be released on video through Eternity and One Coral Pictures, which were teaming to release a new, never-before-seen American version. Details were sketchy. The ad referred to the impending release as translated, which left the potential audience wondering whether it was a new dub or a subtitled version that was in the offing. But a few months later, the first tape hit the shelves. The packaging stressed that the episodes were uncut, though worrisomely got 2 of the 3 episode names wrong, along with Dr. Dibas. This, however, was nothing. What was my reaction upon viewing the episodes themselves?
When the oceans of the earth died...
You've gotta be fucking my duck! Yes, it was just the ZIV version again.
I have this terrible feeling of deja vu.
When the oceans of the earth died, people said...
What the hell happened to available for the first time anywhere? These had already been around for a decade. What happened to completely uncut episodes? All of the ZIV versions have been cut. For that matter, what do they mean by first in a series? ZIV only did 4 episodes and they'd already released 3. Disappointed was understating it a bit. But in one sense, this was new and never before seen, because this time the video, credited to Eternity's parent company Malibu Graphics, offered a few dubious pleasures the ZIV version had not. No, not the cutscenes. No, not the original music. No, not any bonus features. Something far worse.
And are you afraid of a space pirate, Captain?
Impossible. We're a freighter ship. We could never defeat Captain Harlock.
Silence. Now listen carefully. I want you to put out the white flag of surrender and draw them here.
Stop main engine.
Stop main engine.
Malibu had somehow managed to get the sound to occur 5 seconds earlier than the picture, making the video all but unwatchable, proving, if anyone ever had doubts, that some companies would unquestionably put out a product that never bothered to look at.
Fantastic.
Halfway through the first episode, the problem flopped the other way, with the sound subsequently coming 3 seconds too late, resulting in hilarity of this sort.
Maya.
Harlock.
My little Maya, we meet for the first time in a year, and you greet me with tears. Now let me see a smile.
Why did you come here? They're waiting to kill you.
It's shit. Captain, you know, sometimes I think you're a little weird.
And it remained that way until the episode ended, whereupon they reminded us where these episodes had come from by virtue of not even bothering to remove the ZIV logo. The next 2 episodes were synced correctly, but not mixed correctly.
Another emergency. Tell him I took a sleeping pill and he's a deaf one too. It's the middle of the night.
Not being able to hear the dialogue could be considered a blessing of sorts had it been drowned out by anything other than Mark Mercury's hideous background, now foreground music, which, it must be said, was in no way improved by mixing it on top of his aforementioned space disco theme song. It seems almost inconceivable that any company not run by chimps could put out a video this inept. What happened to the promises that had been made in the early ads? And for that matter, what was the deal with Coral Pictures?
There came a point where Malibu Comics received a letter, I believe from Toei, probably from their legal department, saying, you do not have the rights to continue publishing Captain Harlock, so we'd like you to stop. And Malibu contested that, saying that they had purchased the comic book rights from Coral Pictures, which turned out to be a company in Florida. And upon further investigation, they discovered that Coral Pictures did not legitimately hold that license. They were not at fault for it. They had been hoodwinked by a real-life pirate.
So the lack of the actual rights to the Harlock property, which also resulted in the premature demise of the American Harlock comic series, was partly to blame for why Malibu was unable to produce a new dub or subtitled version, if indeed such was their intent. But why continue the charade long after this must have transpired? Surely they knew damn well they were just re-releasing the 10-year-old ZIV versions at the time they were printing up boxes declaring the episodes uncut. Why the botched episode titles? Why the unlistenably mangled soundtrack? Why the audacity to declare the episodes unaltered? They weren't even unaltered from the now oddly competent-looking ZIV dub. Perhaps it's the most one can expect from a company that managed to misspell its own goddamn name on their product. Around a year later, Malibu Graphis released Volume 2, made up of Episode 3 yet again, and predictably Episode 9. They re-released Volume 1 with just the first 2 episodes and promises of improved audio quality, which meant that they fixed the sync issue, but not the bits where the music is louder than the gunfire. They didn't remove the false advertising about uncut episodes or fix the episode names. The box art was improved, though the back copy was changed to indicate that the space pirate Captain Harlock was protecting Earth from the space pirates, reminding anyone who might have forgotten that Malibu had no idea whatsoever what Harlock was. Somewhere in the interim, the company changed its name and learned to spell it. But as would be expected, Malibu's foray into Americanizing Harlock went no further either. In subsequent years, the company was absorbed by Marvel Comics, its original owners departed, and most of its titles were discontinued. It's a great pity that the noble experiment went so horribly awry, as the US wouldn't see an unedited, unmutilated, and complete version of Harlock officially released for another 22 years. Until 2013, it's sad to say that most English-speaking fans would primarily encounter the classic Space Pirate series via ZIV's dub of 4 episodes in 2 different styles, re-released on 3 different tapes by Malibu, and finally burned straight from tape to disc by East West DVD under the moniker of Captain Harlock and Friends, which grouped the episodes with the likes of old Fleischer Superman shorts, Popeye, and Clutch Cargo.
Eating totem pole alive!
I've never heard it said of Harlock that,
It's my Clutch Cargo.
for that much at least, we can be grateful.
When the oceans of the earth die,